Hi, everyone. I'm Peter, and welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. We've got a bit of a break due to travel. So, what we've done here is we've put together one of our favorite episodes for you to enjoy. We have a total back catalog of well over 70 episodes, and here's one that we love.
Thanks for joining us on Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. We hope you love this episode as much as we do. And if you have any ideas for future upcoming episodes, let us know. We love to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Peter, and this is the Tarot Table with Bonnie and Peter, where we lay the cards on the table and talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So shuffle your deck, pull up a chair, and join us at the Tarot Table. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter, and welcome to the Tarot Table with Bonnie and Peter. Today's episode, we're actually going to talk about one of the things that we describe in the purpose of our podcast, and that's how do we use the tarot in everyday life? We're going to specifically talk about, how we use it. So I guess how we use it, but also when and where and why we might use the tarot. Talking about things like ritual work, about do we have a deck of cards in our pocket or in our car or in our purse? Might we use it to inspire things like creative projects, things like a writing project or music? um, just so you understand that the work that we do with the tarot isn't always about reading. It's not always about doing readings, either even for ourselves or for our client work. So I'm going to talk a little bit, if that's Bonnie, you okay with that? I'm going to jump right into ritual work, because I've mentioned this before about, I talk about the Gaian Tarot, for example, as being my ritual deck. So, well, what do I mean by that? And I have I guess a belief or a process in which I look at the tarot as a way to invoke certain energies. So I would use them intentionally in sacred spaces around my house. Now, for lack of a better word, I would call them altars. I've spoken about them before. I have an altar that's dedicated. We have an altar dedicated to Jupiter. We have another one that's dedicated to Venus. And I would use cards that draw on that energy at magical times. And without getting into a lot of detail, I would use what's called a planetary hour. So I can explain that pretty quickly. Something like Monday, which is the day of the moon. The planetary hour of the moon on Monday is the first, I'll say hour. It's not an hour, but it's the first block of time. Sometimes it could be, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour and 5 minutes. That is dedicated to the moon. So for me, if I wanted to do work that was based on, moon related topics, I would look at that first hour on a Monday, which is the moon day. Whereas Tuesday is a day dedicated to Mars. So if I wanted something that was active or assertive, then I might look at doing work in that Mars hour of a Mars day, which would sort of be the first section of a Tuesday, and so forth and so on. And I will often use a card from the Gaian Tarot deck to connect me with the energy that I'm looking to bring out for whatever intentional work that I'm trying to do. So that would be an example of ritual work. The other one I'll mention is actually the ritual, and I'll call it a ritual around the work that I do with the tarot. So I always think when I start working with the tarot, whether it's myself or a client, I have a particular way that I like to shuffle the cards. I like to do this. So, you know, this is just a clearing for me. It's a ritual that happens every time I work with the tarot in a new capacity. So if I'm working for myself or I'm working with a client, I do that little, kind of flip. I have an intention that I state every time I work with either a client or work with myself. I have certain things that I like to do in space. I have certain stones that I like to have around me because I like the energy. I have a grounding exercise that I look at, like that I look at when I start work. So all of these things, when I hear the word ritual, I think about those practices that we do on an ongoing basis or that we do that are repetitive, that put us in the proper mood, that also put a container around the space that we're working with. And that I think also that in some ways highlight the importance of the work that we're about to do. So whether or not it's work at an altar at a sacred space in the house that isn't specific work to the tarot, but I'm using the tarot to help support that work, or whether it's work that is specifically with the tarot, I like that word ritual because it really does highlight, important, even sacred space that's being used to work in this capacity. I don't, that was a long-winded way of describing, what I would think are two ways to look at ritual. Bonnie, how about you? Anything, that resonates with you in that space or in that way when you work with the tarot?
Yeah, absolutely. I do much of the same things that you were talking about in terms of, grounding yourself and, having sort of an intention when you go to use the cards and having that space for readings. When I think about ritual, I think about sometimes like events or,
Mm,
maybe special times that you use the tarot. So in that example, I would say, if there's a full moon coming and, the full moon is really a time of release and letting go.
mhm,
So if, you wanted to create some type of ritual around, well, the full moon is coming, how can I use the tarot to help me with maybe some things that I want to release? Then maybe you could find a spread like on the internet. There's lots of different spreads, for the full moon,
mhm,
or you could even just ask the cards, what am I ready to release? How can I release
mhm.
that? So if there's certain things that you're wanting to do in that sort of ritualistic aspect, then it's okay. You can use your cards to help you with that. And same with the new moon. So the new moon is a really great time to set new intentions for new beginnings. And if you're maybe not clear on something that you want to focus on, then that would be a really great time that you could use your tarot to sort of help you come up with an intention or see how to best move forward. So that's kind of what I think about in terms of ritual, but I exactly the things that you said earlier, I would definitely agree with that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And same, like I, would have times like and around the two times you mentioned, full moon, new moon, even around the changing of the astrological signs or seasons that would
Mhm.
happen as well would be another time. I think October 31st, Samhain is a great time to be able to do tarot work. I've got particular spread that I would use on that day. So yeah,
Yeah, even like
yeah. Sorry, no, no,
sorry.
no, go ahead,
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
say even like your birthday, New
Yeah,
Year's, like sort of
yeah,
these milestone events.
yeah.
Those are, sometimes we don't think
Mhm,
about them in terms of ritual, but those could be, celebrations or
mhm.
milestones where you could use the cards in that aspect.
Yeah, yeah, great suggestion. So I hope as people are listening, I hope that because what Bonnie and I, just to kind of get back to almost the intention of this podcast when we had talked was around the idea of using the tarot as a tool in everyday life. So that concept of that connection to ritual, whether it's a special time in the year, whether it's a special space in the home, or whether it's a special intention that you're setting, you can really use the cards to help support that kind of work. So yeah, that's
Absolutely.
yeah, that's great. I hope it gives people some ideas as to where they can sort of branch out.
I
So,
know, so many ideas,
yeah.
so many
Now,
paths.
you
How oh,
no,
sorry,
no,
go ahead.
I was going to say because I had mentioned the idea of of using the tarot when you're out and about, and you carry a deck around with you, do you not?
Yeah,
Several.
I have a few secret stash places.
Yeah, yeah.
Tarot cards. So I have a mini Light Seers tarot deck that I actually created like a cloth, a wrap, like a cloth that I use to wrap them, and then I use it for readings. That is always in my purse. And I literally plan my purse, and I literally carry just a small little purse, and it fits in there perfectly, like my glasses, my phone, and my tarot, of course, my credit cards. But I do always have a deck on me, and I always have a deck in my car. So it was funny. I went for dinner with some friends the past weekend, and we were joking. So, and I said, "Oh, I think I forgot I didn't bring my purse or something." And I said, "Oh, but I have a deck here." I do always have a deck on me. And I always have one in my car. I guess the next step would be to put one in my husband's car in case, we're in there. But the great thing about having a deck with you is, sometimes, I pick up my kids from school and I'm sitting in the parking lot waiting for them. It's a great opportunity just to pull some cards sometimes if you just want to pull cards or you have a question. But also, this happens quite a bit. So, if we're going on a long road trip, my husband and I are in the car and he'll say, "Hey, do you want to do a reading for me?" And of course, I'm always up for a reading. So I'll do readings for him while he's driving because, I have my deck in the car and in my purse. So he even has an option as to which deck I can use, but always have a tarot deck on me. How about you, Peter? Do you have one also?
Well, it's funny
I
that you
know the answer.
well, you mentioned the idea of the Light Seers Tarot in this small tin, and I literally have it sitting right here. This is the one you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
And I had picked it up with the idea that I always wanted to have a deck with me, but I don't carry a purse, and it's too big for my wallet and my pocket. So what I do is I have the Rider Waite like mini tiny deck. It
Oh, like
size
this one?
wise, yeah. That's terrible. Yes, that's the one that is in my car. So I have it on the console just below, like all the air conditioning and the heating and stuff. But because my wife doesn't drive. So if I'm ever in the car, I'm usually alone. So if I'm alone, I'm not going to be doing a reading while I'm driving, dangerous. Um,
Dangerous.
but even if my wife were to say, "Oh, you know what, do a tarot reading again," it would be difficult to do because I'm the person that's driving. But I have one in the car because I like the connections to the real world. And I think I've talked to you about this before. Um, if I do something that makes me think of a card, I will sometimes go and draw it. And I actually posted an example probably a few months ago on Instagram where I'd done a pretty intense workout. So I thought about the intensity and the forward driving of the Knight of Wands. So when I got in the car, of course, dripping in sweat, I took out the Knight of Wands, took out my phone, and took a picture with the background of the gym. And in some ways, I'll say it's like a reminder for me, like a learning tool for me that was like, well, this particular occasion, this particular incident brought out that energy of the Knight of Wands for me. So, when Instagram does its, anniversary post is, hey, a year ago you posted this, or, usually posts to Instagram and Facebook, and I get a little memory that shows up. I always think those are great ways to collate our day-to-day experience with the tarot. And sometimes it's a visual. Sometimes I'll see something like four circles in a particular pattern. I'll go, my goodness, it makes me think of the Four of Pentacles, and I'll go and grab the card.
Mm.
Yeah, so I only because of it's impractical. I don't do readings on the go, but I always travel with a deck. Like we did a 48-hour flight to see some friends, and I brought the This Might Hurt tarot deck with me. Like
Did you just bring one? Or did you...
I brought just one. Yes, I brought just one.
That is restraint, Peter.
It is restraint.
I wish I had that capability.
I did just bring one. Usually, like if I do travel, sometimes I'll travel for work. I usually have 2, 3, or 4 decks with me. But yeah, I did. I traveled with just one. So there's always that opportunity as well to kind of bring a deck with you when you travel. It also, you can always pull it out if you're flying. You can always pull it out on a plane. And working with the tarot sometimes can cause some interesting looks from the people who are beside you.
You know what? A few months ago, I went to California, and on the way back, I was sitting beside this wonderful lady, and we started talking, and I told her that, I read tarot, and I was doing readings for her on the plane. So my little light seers in that, wrap came in handy, and yeah, reading for total stranger on a plane.
Yeah. It's funny because I've had the same experience happen. I'm not reluctant, but I always know I have a particular box, a wooden box that I keep my I've got a series of different Rider-Waite Smith decks. So the one that I use for personal reading, I keep in a wooden box with a gem in it. And I can be guaranteed almost every time that I go through security, because I carry it on. I bring it on the plane. It it goes through, a little belt that puts it off to the side when they go through the X-ray machine. It always causes them to go through it, and they always open it up. It's always like, well, what is this? And so it's deck of cards. Oh, so it's deck of cards. Because when I say tarot, their response always, what? So my canned response now is deck of cards, and then they put it back in and away they go. So I always know if I'm bringing that deck and it's in my carry-on, it's coming on the plane, I know I'm going to take an extra 2 or 3 minutes at security. So anyways, just
That is dedication, bringing the box with you.
bring the
Peter.
box. Look, when in a moment I'll pull it and show you what I mean by it. Like I quite like it, but this actually goes back a little bit to the idea of ritual, because I think because it's a deck that I use for a particular purpose, then having it in a certain box to me and it sets the importance of the space that the box contains. So I know when I'm going to get that box and I'm opening it, in some ways, the ritual of doing that is signaling the importance of this particular deck for the work that I want to do. And that, I'm going at it with an intention of doing, it might be self-reflective work, but I'm doing work that is important to me. And the box, the way I store that particular deck signals its importance. And I've mentioned that before, the curtain behind me, it's got to have 20, 25, maybe even 30 decks. And some of them, they're just stacked with elastics. I don't use them for that purpose. So, when there are certain decks that I use for a purpose, I attach almost a ritual to it, sort of a specialness to it.
Yeah,
specialness, that's a word.
A specialness, yeah. You created my daughter does that. She creates words all the time. And I say, is that a word? And she's like, whatever. So we'll just say whatever.
Whatever. I'm too old. I'm too old to use the word whatever. But yeah. Specialness.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Specialness sounds good.
So do you ever use cards for creative projects?
Yeah, so not as much as I would like to. I have used them for inspirations for writing before. I actually have a blog post that I wrote. I don't know when it was, but it was at least 10 years ago when I had my first MRI. And I actually supported myself in the MRI by visualizing the Four of Swords. And then the visual of the Four of Swords then prompted a blog post to write about that particular experience. So on occasion, I've had the presence of the Empress has caused me to write about spring, because I always think of the Empress, I think of abundance. But I was gifted a reading by Susie Chang. So if anybody's not familiar with Susie Chang, she is probably the one of the modern experts on esoteric connections in the tarot. Doesn't do it anymore, but had a podcast that goes in significant depth into the Kabbalistic and the Golden Dawn attributes to the tarot. I was gifted a reading, and I won't go into the details of the reading, but one of the cards that came up was the Ace of Wands, which really is that idea of creative spark. And knowing that I was an amateur musician, she said, well, you should actually write a song inspired by the Ace of Wands. And I have actually played with that idea. I haven't completed it yet, but there are from time to time where I will play with music as I believe it would be attributed to certain cards. So, that's about as close as I've come to using the tarot deck for creative purposes. Although, I say I haven't done it. I've given a couple of examples where I have. How about you, from a creative perspective with the tarot?
Yeah, I have actually. So I think I may have mentioned this in a prior podcast, but I write yoga nidra meditations, and usually within those meditations you go on a journey. And I used a card from actually it was Sasha Graham's Tarot of the Witch's Garden. And I can't remember, I think I just pulled the card. I don't think I specifically pulled the card to use that for creative writing. But I used the imagery that was on that card to create a journey for a meditation. And it was beautiful. And it was it was such a nice way to be able to incorporate the energy of that card.
Mhm.
The Ace of Pentacles is, new beginnings and planting seeds. And it worked so nicely in what it is that I wanted to do with the meditation. So I did use that for creative writing. Um, but in any case, like that's just one example. But, if people are authors or, writing, short
Mhm.
stories or whatever they're doing, you can use the tarot to inspire anything like that. You could use the court cards as personality types, for books or for stories. So I think it's like genius to use something like the tarot for creative writing if you need something, right? Like a lot of times people already have the ideas, but if you're ever needing some inspiration, I think it's a wonderful tool to be able to use for that, even to spark art or anything really. Like it's just an amazing visual tool to help you with creative endeavors of any kind, really.
Yeah, and you mentioned writing, and I would do. Corinne Kenner actually has a book that's called Tarot for Writers, and it does
Okay.
just that. It uses how to use the tarot to be able to support the writing process. So I think it's probably a more common vehicle for creative work than people might think. So again, right, as we're talking about ways you can use the tarot, we're trying to shake, I guess maybe, yeah, we're trying to shake that idea that the tarot is just it's just about doing tarot readings. So,
Exactly.
yeah. Hmm.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other ways that you would use the tarot that sort of sits outside of that realm of of readings.
Yeah, one way I love to use the cards is that if I'm in need of a certain type of energy or if there's something that I want to do, then I will intentionally pull a card for that. So, I guess I'll out myself here, but I I have an issue with boundaries and lots of creative ideas. So Empress energy is really, really strong. But what's hard for me is to create plans and to really ground that energy and to take action. And so for purposes like that, I would pull the Emperor card to be like, I need the energy of the Emperor to create a container so that I can bring these ideas to life. So using it intentionally for that reason. Same with like the Strength card. If there's something that I need to do and I really want to harness the energy of strength or courage or even just compassion, really intentionally pulling a card. And then what you can do with that, sometimes I put it by my bedside table. So, when I'm sleeping at night, I kind of imagine that, that I'm absorbing the energy of whatever it is card that I'm working with. And you can also carry it around with you during the day. I've taken cards with me in the car. So I'll pull a card and then it travels with me throughout the day. And then you can work with a card for as long as you need to. So a really great way, yeah, to use the cards without just doing a reading would be specifically pulling the card so that you can use that energy for whatever it is that you need or yeah, like to sort of help you move forward. I do that quite often and it's like your little friend that's always
Mhm.
with you, you're never alone and you always have that ability to tap into some energy that you might be lacking or maybe something that you need to let go of too, right?
Yeah, yeah, they are. You bring up a really good point. It's a great visual medium and visual reminder of what we might need to bring with us moving forward. The idea of I need boundaries and I need structure. Well, we have a card for that, right? We have the Emperor, so why not use the visual of the Emperor to kind of harness that energy. I think I mentioned to you earlier as we were prepping for this. I have a card because I've talked I think in the last couple of episodes that I'm looking to revamp my website. So that process has started this week, and I'm not a particularly visually creative person. So, and I mean that from an artistic perspective. So, my wife can change things around from a design perspective in the house, and I can walk around for 3 or 4 days without noticing anything has changed whatsoever. There's that concept of visual. I can't draw. Drawing is something that, I can't draw well. I guess I can draw and sketch, but you'd have a hard time figuring out what I'm trying to draw. I'm probably the funniest team member to have in a game of Pictionary or something like that because I would be frustrating. Um, but so, but the website has an element of visual design to it. Their color scheme and redesigning a logo. So I really wanted to draw on that. I'll say almost the inner energy, that inner kind of creative energy. So this card is literally sitting beside my computer. It's, I would, right? It
The
is the
Queen of
Queen of
Wands.
Wands. It is the ultimate creatress. Like this is that when we talk about inner, and I always think of the Queen as being that inner energy. And then I think about the wands as being that creative, almost that life force of creativity, that spark of inspiration. I was really, and then I chose it from this particular deck. For those of you who can see or watching on YouTube, this is actually a person. The Queen of Wands is drawing a picture on her desk. She's in the process of artistically and visually creating something. So it's one of my favorite tarot cards, I think, of all time. And I thought I know exactly what I'm going to draw, and I'm going to leave it here, which is why I won't use this. I won't use the deck today because it's missing one card for my in the reading. I'm going to leave it here during that entire process. So the idea of, yeah, like you said, trying to intentionally, harness the energy, of a card is something that, like you, I do quite a bit. I'd be known to having a particular card with me, in the car, if going on a long journey. Then I'll think about, well, what do we want to do? We want to move our home with us and be safe. Well, maybe I put the Chariot in there. Maybe I put the Four of Wands in there as well. Or the Ten of Cups for, like I would do exactly the same thing. I would focus on what energy I'm trying to harness and grab the card, which is again an excellent way to increase the use of your tarot deck so that you're using it for a variety of reasons. Yeah.
I love that. I actually have the temperance card sitting on my desk. So I need a lot of temperance energy also, sort of in moderation and moving forward. And so I actually keep that card on my desk all the time. So I like to have temperance with me.
Right. They're fantastic visual reminders. And I mean, I'm glancing up and I can see, actually it's not a card, but it's a wooden um almost relief of the Rider-Waite-Smith magician card, which is, how I've
Mm.
always referred to my website. And it's a reminder about the importance of the tools of the tarot. And, the magician has the tools of all four suits sitting on his table or on his altar. Yeah, like I would say I think one of the things that people probably miss the most with the tarot is the power of it as a visual medium and an
Mhm.
intentional visual medium. So doing something intentionally, using a card intentionally, because they all have meanings and they all have energy that they bring. That's one of the reasons why they're so effective in a reading. Well, why not use that when you're trying to focus on that particular aspect of a card, on that particular energy? So it sounds like we both use them in very similar ways.
Yeah, for sure. Is there any other way that you might use the tarot?
The only way I've mentioned it before, and I think when my wife was traveling for work, every so often I would sneak a tarot card in her suitcase as a reminder, of whether or not it's, depth of and affection with something like the Two of Cups or the Lover's card, or a reminder of me. I always connect myself with the Magician card as, somebody's trying to learn how to use the tools of the tarot. So, tuck it in between the sweaters that she's, putting inside of her suitcase. That again is a little visual reminder, almost a calling card or, a business card or something that says, hey, just, yeah, 5 seconds to think of me through a tarot card. That can be, effective, can be effective as well. So but the only thing I can think of. How about you?
A big part of how I use the tarot for myself and how I like to help other people is to set intentions. So a lot of times in life, we kind of don't really know what we want. We think from this conscious perspective of the things that we want, but sometimes when you go a little deeper, subconsciously there's other things that you might be wanting. So I love to use the cards to set intentions or to create an intention. And I actually do that every month. in a newsletter. So I'll pull 3 cards, and then based on the energy that's coming up from the cards, then I see what is that intention that's coming up through the story that's being weaved through all 3 cards. So again, it's just a really beautiful way of, sometimes we don't really trust what we're thinking or feeling. So by having this tool to help you see what's in front of you, and then you could be like, oh, I didn't realize how much I actually want that, or how much I actually need that. So that's probably one of my favorite ways of using the tarot, is to actually create an intention. And then you can get a little bit more creative and say, like, well, what's the next step that I can take towards this intention? Or, what's blocking me from, if I have this intention, how come I don't have it now? Right. So you can really go down this interesting pathway with what comes up and where you want to go. But that's my big secret. I love setting intentions with the tarot cards.
Now, when you can I ask a follow-up question? Because I think that's fascinating. It's fascinating work. Did you do it monthly and put it out in a newsletter?
Mhm.
You like shuffle and randomly draw, you said 3 cards?
Yeah. So I have the intention of creating an intention
Right.
for my community, and, it's not going to resonate with everybody, but if it does resonate with you, then maybe that message is meant for you. So I'll pull 3 cards, and there's 1 card in that spread that will really kind of be the foundation of what that intention is. But then, other energy from the other cards can also make their way into that intention. So I love to see what comes up, and then create it's just a positive, statement. It could be something like, uh, I love my life, right? Like,
Right.
it's something really simple like that. I like to create something simple that people can remember and use every day. But then it's just a way to sort of ground you and to make you look forward to something. It's like, if you want to, like, we could just use the example of joy, like, my life is joyful. It could
Right.
just be as simple as that, and every day you're telling yourself, my life is
Mhm.
joyful. And then you start to feel that way. Like, if
Right.
your life isn't joyful, but that's what you want to intend, then, things start happening that make you feel like that. So that's really where I love to play
Mm. Mm.
in the sandbox. And then, of course, you can use that with, meditations or saying affirmations every day. There's a lot of different things you can do with that. But that's it. I pull 3 cards, and from there, I create something really simple from the messaging. And then I'll do an actual card reading on my blog. And then you can go in and see the cards that I've picked, and it goes a little bit deeper, but it's usually just something really simple.
Wow. Because I think it's commendable in some ways, because you're almost handing over the I guess the order of the intention to the universe. Because if you're shuffling the cards, you're allowing the chaos of a random draw to set your intention. That was the purpose of my question, because I'm like, it's really interesting to say, okay, and this is where I think the magic of the tarot comes from. It's like, I've got 78 cards. I'm going to shuffle them up, and I'm going to pull 3, and from the 3 cards, of which I have no idea, I'm going to set my intention. Which I always think, it really does, doesn't it? It causes us to have to focus in a completely different direction than we might have done otherwise, because we're focused on something that shows up
Mhm.
simply by the act of shuffling and drawing cards. So that's I just I yeah, that could be a practice that you see me incorporating soon. So thank you for
I
sharing.
hope so.
Well, yeah,
That
because
that's
it's
that's my whole mission in life, is
yeah,
to, like, spread the word of
yeah,
how incredible it is to
this
live
is
with
cool.
intention,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And you could make it more simple. Like I said, I love threes. I do a lot of things in threes, but you could pull 1 card, and from 1 card, you could create an intention based on that. But when I am doing it, I have my sort of my community in mind. But every time I do it, I even say this when I'm sending out the newsletter, I'm like, this is just as much an intention for me as it is for everybody else, right? Like, it's all that message that's coming up is also for me, not, just for the collective.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Now I know we'll do our draw, because we always finish off with that. But you mentioned your newsletter a couple of times, so maybe I'll throw a left curve, and my apologies for that. If somebody wanted to sign up for your newsletter, Bonnie, where would they do that? How would they go
Oh,
about signing up?
well, thanks, Peter.
Right?
They could just go to my website, which is breathewithbonnie.com. And we usually have that in the show notes. I actually give away a free meditation. So you get, I think it's like a 23-minute yoga nidra meditation as a thank you for signing up. And then each month, although I haven't sent one out in July. July's been a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
So we're recording this at the end of July. So
Right.
I think I'm amalgamating my July and August together. But generally, I'll send one once a month with an intention, and then there's a whole card reading that goes with it, with journaling prompts and more affirmations. So,
Well, there you go. See, so for people who wanted to get that start around using the tarot for a different tool, you're providing a really good jumping off point for them. So thanks for
oh,
sharing.
thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right. We're gonna do our
Yeah, you want to pull a
draw?
card?
Yeah, I've got my deck here. Do you want to pull first? Do you
Want me to pull first? Okay,
Doesn't matter.
sure. Okay, let me shuffle. I'm using the Dream Keepers Tarot.
All right.
Okay, I'm shuffling, and okay, this one kind of stuck out. Oh, interesting. So I've pulled the Nine of Wands.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the imagery in the Dreamkeeper's Tarot is quite similar to that of the Rider-Waite-Smith. It has someone who's, there's nine wands, and she kind of looks a little bit tattered, if you will. I think her clothes may be ripped, or looks like her arms are even. It's just interesting imagery. So for me to explain it doesn't sound as nice as if you were actually looking at it, if you were watching on YouTube. But the messaging I get from the Nine of Wands is always perseverance. Whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that you're working on, if you're in a certain situation, it's like, just keep going. You're almost at the finish line. And sometimes we want to give up, right? Because we're tired, we feel beat up, or maybe we're not really seeing a lot of success coming from whatever it is that we're doing. But that Nine of Wands is really just to tell you, like, you're almost crossing the finish line. We're almost done. Keep going. Don't give up. Keep moving forward, no matter how hard it feels at this point. Usually, and I think they say this with manifestation, usually we give up on our dreams right before they're about to come true, right? Because we're like, this isn't working. So it's that messaging that I get from the Nine of Wands is really like, and it's hard, right? Wands energy is really like fiery, and now you've got nine of them, and you're like, I don't know if I can handle this, but you're almost there. You're going to cross the finish line. It's going to be okay. So keep moving forward. That's usually my messaging with the Nine of Wands. What would you say, Peter?
Yeah, mine would be very, very similar. I'd use the same kind of language, the idea of sometimes feeling battle weary, or beaten down. And that exactly that. I'm not going to repeat. I would have nothing to add. I'd have nothing to add. You made me think that when you said we sometimes stop just prior, when we talk manifestation, we sometimes, stop just a little too early. You immediately made me think of a Friends episode, where Phoebe is following a lurker around in Las Vegas who will go to the slot machines and will put their money in just as somebody moves away. And, then they win she goes, oh, you won my jackpot. In some ways, that's almost what this is. It's that energy of wanting to walk away before you've actually achieved your goal. And that would be the one thing I would reiterate to that as well, is that, you'd really just have to stick to it. And that numerological idea that, when you're a 9, you're almost there. Like, the 10 of Wands, although not a pleasant card, is the last of the pips in the wand. So that 9 is, and 9s are sometimes actually about the idea of peak power and completion. So although you might not know that you're done, you're probably much closer to being done than you think. Oh, yeah, that's great. That's a beautiful card as well for those who can see it, because the 9 of Wands in the Rider-Waite, they definitely look much more battle weary. I think they're actually hanging off one of the wands. Like they've got one of the wands.
Their head is bandaged, or
yeah.
The imagery in this deck is really beautiful.
Okay, I'm back to the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I was going to use that This Might Hurt, but like I said, the Queen of Wands is missing, so
You got to have that Queen of Wands. I'm gonna be honest too. I love the Queen of Wands. That's like probably one of my favorite cards. Well, it's not probably, it is one of my favorite cards
Yeah.
in the deck. And she's my idol. I want to be the Queen of Wands.
It's funny because I had, I mean, I put it out there for the reasons, but in this deck in particular, I really do like the card from a creativity perspective. And I often think of the Queen of Wands as kind of the queen of creativity, but more than any other deck, this card really showed that. But that's not what I pulled today. If I'd have pulled the Queen of
Okay.
Wands from the Rider-Waite-Smith, that would have been interesting.
That would have
I
been.
pulled Judgment,
Ah,
which is it's really funny because I just completed the last kind of lessons of the Major Arcana course. So we talked
which is
about this.
awesome, by the way.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So there you go. A little bit of a plug for those of you, and I'll talk about it afterwards. But if you're interested in learning, going in pretty deep with the Major Arcana, we covered everything, including a little take on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life and its association with the tarot. But I find this card, and for those who can't see it, I'll describe it. But I'm using the Rider-Waite-Smith, so you can actually go and Google Judgment Rider-Waite-Smith. It's card 20, second last of the majors. It looks like a card that represents the Christian concept of Judgment Day. And the reason I find that, this is one of those cards where, a softer, actually, you know what I might do, actually, since, I might actually go and I've held up the Judgment card. I might go and look for the Judgment card in the This Might Hurt. I don't know. Hopefully it's not that far. Oh, look at this. There we go. Oh, well, not that much better.
No.
But it's a different image. So I'm going to hold them both up. So the idea and the Judgment card in the Rider-Waite-Smith is about kind of Christian Judgment Day. The idea that that idea of elation, that idea of reawakening, that concept, I guess, of enlightenment and reemerging. But it's done through I guess, the New Testament concept of rising on Judgment Day. And that I always think that, that can be, in some ways, it can be limiting. It can be confronting for some people. So when I grabbed the Judgment card from the Light Seers Tarot, sorry, did I grab it from the Light
No.
Seers? No, from This Might,
Yep.
this
Yep.
might hurt. So I grabbed it from the This Might Hurt. It's actually a very similar concept. It's actually one in the beginner's class. I talk to people about making a personal connection to a card. I say, like, I think I've talked about this before. I often connect the Hermit card to Stairway to Heaven and the actual Hermit card that is on the inside of the album sleeve of the Led Zeppelin album, which that's on. You can make, I talk about the Wheel of Fortune and the song, Spinning Wheel by Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I always think a personal connection to a card is a great way to remember its meaning. And the funny thing with the Judgment card that I held up from the This Might Hurt deck is actually the story that I connect to in the Judgment card. So it's the story of Anubis, an Egyptian god of something. So my apologies, probably, well, an Egyptian god. And the myth is that when somebody dies, their soul, which is represented by a heart, is on one side of the scale, and I think it's the feather of Mot, or the feather is weighed on the other side of the scale. And if your soul is lighter than the feather of Mot, then you go on to everlasting life. And if it is heavier, then then the name will come to me, but it was your soul goes to the devourer. I think it's Amit. I think it was Ammit, goes to the great devourer, or the great swallower or gobbler, and they gobble up your soul, and that's it, you're done. And I'm like, not a softer concept, but what it does, to me, this card always highlights the idea that I am worthy. That it's a card that means I might not feel like I'm enough, but I am enough exactly as I am, exactly where I am, exactly who I am, that I am enough. That the Judgment is actually a self-judgment, and the Judgment card is a reminder that says, there is no need to judge, that we're not serving ourselves well to judge. Um, and this is where I think that iconography of, the trumpets blaring and people standing up, it's almost that eureka moment to loudly proclaim, I am enough. That's kind of what this card does for me. So it does have those meanings of things like reemergence and enlightenment, that idea that we're both making ourselves lighter by having that soul kind of leave our body, but also that we are being enlightened by, you know, kind of proclaiming a better version of ourselves. I don't know. It is a heavy card with some big ideas. What about you? When you see the Judgment card when it comes up, what does that make you think
What
of?
do I think? Well, I don't think about people gobbling me up.
Well, it's a myth. It's an Egyptian
I'm just
myth.
making fun
Yeah,
of
yeah.
you.
No, I know. No. I was going to say,
No,
I
thank
thought
you
maybe
for sharing that.
thinking the idea, oh, well, let me go into a deck that's a little bit lighter. I probably should have thought about it ahead of time, going, oh, no, the card's not.
A deck with the name This Might Hurt might not be the right side of light that you were looking for, but that's okay. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I am a huge proponent of the I am worthy movement.
Yeah.
Although of course I still need that messaging for myself, but that's beautiful, like a really lovely way to look at that card. And very similar how I see the Judgment card, it's almost like this calling, like you're now being called to rise and be you. Like take the mask off. You don't have to pretend to be somebody that you're not, like people pleasing or doing something that you're doing just because you think you have to. So I usually tell people, I'm like, if you were to be, called and look back on your life, would you be happy with all of the things that you did? Or would there be some areas that you think, oh, I just wish I did that, right? So it's this idea of like, what is it that you want to do? And step into that power and show your light. Like you're being called to be the true you, like shine your light, not the light that you think that other people want you to be. And worthiness is really where that comes from. We don't believe that we're worthy enough as we are. So maybe we wear these masks or we do these things that other people want us to do. And we're maybe not living the life that we really want to live. So Judgment is saying, hey, I'm calling you. It's your turn. Like rise and make those decisions and step in and take the path of where it is that you want to go, leaving no regrets behind. Like you don't want to look back on your life and say, oh, I wish I just did that thing, or, I wish I took the path that I really wanted to go down. So Judgment is heavy, but when that card comes up for me, I'm like, oh, Bonnie, what mask are you wearing today? Like time to take it off. Right. So I think it's a powerful card.
Yeah, it really is. The way you described it, it really, to me, connected to the card that comes just before it as well. That idea of the sun, where that concept of true self. So it's the idea, it's almost like what you're saying is, I have found who I am in card 19 in the sun card. And now the Judgment says, great, you know who you are? Tell everybody else about it. Now it's time to be, like you said, take off your mask and to really let your inner light shine forward so that other people can see it as well. Yeah, you're right. A heavy card, but the way it's been described is it's also a very powerful card as well. So.
I'm gonna see that now as the I am worthy card. It's funny. I have some little like I practice what I preach. So I tell people, when you have an intention, put it on your bathroom mirror, put it where you can see it every day. And I have I am enough, which is, quite similar to I am worthy. I have it on my fridge. I have it on my bathroom mirror. So it's like when I see that card now, I'm going to think about worthiness and that intention. So
yeah, I think in my notes somewhere, and it might be in the class, I think I actually literally used that phrase, I am enough, around the Judgment card. So.
Yeah, I love that. I'm stealing that from you.
All right. Hey, it's not, we're in a public podcast, so it's not like, to steal away.
It's not a secret.
It's not a secret. Exactly. I was going to say, the whole point is to try and make this, accessible. And I've already told you, I'm going to take that idea of the monthly intention. So there you go. Steal away.
Awesome. Right. So what do you have going on, Peter? What are you working on? How can people find you? How can they sign up for your course?
Well, I mean, always my website, so peterwhitetarot.com. What am I working on? I've just completed actually the live cohorts of my 3 classes. So that's, I'll call it, if for those of you who are looking to focus kind of at a very beginner level, I've got sort of a beginner's journey. For those who might want to go a little bit deeper, I have both a 4-part course on the minor arcana and a 4-part course on the major arcana. I am also in the process of doing a revamp on my website. So I've mentioned this. That process is now started. My website will be live and continues to be live, but it will look different hopefully by the end of August. We're recording this now at the end of July, so 4 or 5 weeks. So I'm really thrilled about that. So taking a little bit of a hiatus from teaching and doing my own learning. So I have a stack of tarot resources that I'm going to go and dig into with the idea that I'd really like to write a comprehensive course on the history of the tarot. As a student of history, as somebody who taught history, I think that that's probably my next project, but that likely won't happen until early 2025. And I'm just not sure what the format or structure will look like, but I want to do something a little bit differently and would like to, explore some of the different paths of the history of the tarot, considering it, there's not an awful lot that, there's not a lot of certainty around. There's a lot of myth around that, and to try and break that down. So that's sort of what I'm working on now. How about you? How about you?
Yeah, people can find me again on my website, breathewithbonnie.com. I don't have any classes or courses available right now, and it's the summer, so things are busy.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll see what's in store soon. I'm still doing, tarot consultations, as I know you love to call them. I think that's a great way. Instead of saying a tarot reading, it's a consultation. You're consulting with people and having a conversation. So that private meditation classes. So yeah, lots of fun stuff there. I'm also on Instagram, not very active, but you can find me there at Breathe with Bonnie.
Perfect.
Hmm.
Excellent. Well, with that, then we want to thank everyone for coming to join us today at the Tarot Table. Bonnie and I say so long and until next time.
Bye.